So what happens if you have a belief system generated by institutions that cannot see these systems, reshaping these systems constantly? Well, what happens is the situation that we're in now. Now, when you apply market rationale, which cannot see any of these things, which cannot see risk, which cannot see institutional function, which cannot see power dynamics, which cannot see care, and which cannot see that these things are tied to political responsibility, it does a very simple thing. It strips back the output of that institution. And what has happened in the last 30 years is we have had not only theoretical economics, which cannot see these systems and thinks that this should be done by an efficient man owning a woman, but we have also had political cultures who are currently on display on Twitter, who have operated around an individualist political philosophy where any spending that they see in these systems is clearly evidence of moral failing. So they are now looking for a multidimensional understanding of inequality, and in actual fact they're going to be given it by crisis. So what we have been doing is we have been applying market rationale to institutions that cannot see them, and over a very long period of time we have been stripping them back and eroding them. So an example of this would be when I worked in Keighley with commercial sexual exploitation. I don't have PTSD because of the sexual exploitation aspect of it. I already understand what commercial exploitation of children for sex looks like. I'm familiar with those patterns. The thing that left me with PTSD was the realisation that the system that would protect these girls, which had protected me at 14, 15, had gone. So I'm going to do another story. When I was about 14, 15, I shoplifted a top. And I went to a girls' group that I used to have to go to on a Thursday night, which was run by my social worker, and I made the very serious mistake of saying that this top had been given to me by an older boyfriend. And within a week I had been on the receiving end of a multi-agency response done very gently by my school and by my social worker and by my foster parents, gently inquiring about this new boyfriend to ascertain what risk I was at. By the time I worked in Keighley, the system had been eroded to the point where we were not meeting those baselines, and it hadn't been done consciously. It hadn't been done by anybody who said we won't protect these. It was a combination of the demonisation of these children that's the mainstream fodder of our politics culture. It was particularly the dehumanisation of working class girls, so nobody saw them as children who could be abused. And I mean nobody, I mean widespread. But within that context, these systems had been eroded very gradually to the point where the system that had protected me in the early 90s was basically a decision-making and gatekeeping system to find ways to not protect these girls. And that's a much more complicated matter. So when you apply market-based rationale to institutions that deal with care, it strips back their primary output, which is the care, the relationship, the capacity to investigate, the capacity to build that relationship. And we have just done that to all of our care institutions on a very, very grand scale. And the impact of that is particularly being seen in our social care crisis, because we have applied a market-based rationale, an individualist-based rationale. We have basically dissolved these systems and liquidated them, and now we don't understand why, when we apply market-based rationale to this, we did not get this efficient response. Well, we are getting an efficient response. We're getting a crisis which will correct the understanding of these systems at a policy-making level. That's efficiency. So what this crisis should do, by the time it's fully played out, is force those whose understanding of market-based rationale to not include women and not include care and not include these forces to rectify that. So this is efficient, but I think in this case economists are going to have a bit of a shock because that efficiency might upend them a little bit.